Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines: Genocide scholars declare Israel committing genocide in Gaza, push for Europe defense investments to be labeled sustainable, missing persons globally increased by 70% in last 5 years, Mexico's data center boom raises water use concerns, smartphone ban spread, and monster seaweed bloom taking over the Atlantic. Starting with politics, Thai court sacks PM for ethics violation. The Constitutional Court has dismissed Prime Minister Shinawatra from office, ruling she violated ethics in a leaked telephone call with Cambodia's former leader Hun Sen when both countries were on the brink of an armed border conflict in June. Shinawatra is the fifth Thai Prime Minister in 17 years to be removed by the court. Iran accused of sponsoring anti-Semitic attacks in Australia. The Australian Security Intelligence Organisation said Iran was behind at least 2 of the anti-Semitic attacks in Australia since October 7, 2023. The attacks were carried out by criminals hired to perform arson. Iranian Ambassador Sodekhi and 3 other officials were ordered to leave Australia, which withdrew its own diplomats from Tehran. Iran rejected the allegations. There have also been 20 Iran-backed plots in other countries since the beginning of 2022, including the UK, Netherlands, and US. Indonesian President revokes political privileges. It comes in the wake of widespread anti-government protests and rioting over issues such as extra pay for parliamentarians and housing allowances. President Subianto also spoke out against the protests, saying some actions in rallies that have spread across the country in recent days amounted to treason and terrorism. Bolivian opposition leader released from jail after almost 3 years. Right-wing leader Luis Fernando Camacho spent almost 3 years in pre-trial detention for his role in violent unrest that led to the 2019 ouster of then-President Morales. Camacho will be confined to his home awaiting trial on charges of sedition and terrorism linked to the violent protests that engulfed Bolivia after Morales disputed 2019 re-election. Argentina's military exodus as austerity hits salaries. Over 2,200 armed forces personnel have resigned in 2025 due to poverty-level wages, with some Navy sailors earning less than 600,000 pesos, $435 monthly, what an Uber driver makes weekly. President Millei's budget cuts have left critical defense positions unfilled across all 3 branches, undermining national security capabilities amid rising global tensions. Moving to stories in conflict, genocide scholars declare Israel committing genocide in Gaza. The International Association of Genocide Scholars passed a resolution finding Israel's policies and actions in Gaza meet the legal definition of genocide in Article 2 of the United Nations Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, 1948. The association also found Israel was committing crimes against humanity in Gaza. It said 86% of its 500 members voted for the resolution, which calls on Israel to immediately cease all acts that constitute genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity against Palestinians in Gaza, including deliberate attacks against and killing of civilians, including children, starvation, deprivation of humanitarian aid, water, fuel and other items essential to the survival of the population, sexual and reproductive violence, and forced displacement of the population. Hungary sues EU over using frozen Russian assets for Ukraine aid. The lawsuit was filed against the European Peace Facility, EPF, a financial program which facilitates military aid to allied countries. The European Union decided last year to give 99.7% of interest payments from frozen Russian central bank assets to Ukraine via the EPF. UN votes to end peacekeeping force in Lebanon. The UN Security Council voted unanimously to withdraw the multinational peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon from 2027 after nearly 5 decades, following pressure from the US and Israel. The peacekeeping forces' role there included monitoring during last year's Israel-Hezbollah war. NATO members hit old spend target, but just 3 meet new goal. NATO said all 32 members are projected to finally meet a long-standing goal of spending 2% of their overall economic output on defense this year, while only 3 will meet a new goal set at 3.5% of GDP, agreed in June. The 3 countries were Poland, whose spending this year is projected to reach 4.5% of GDP, while Lithuania's will be 4% and Latvia's 3.7%. Israeli airstrike kills Houthi rebel prime minister. Israel said that the airstrike had targeted the Iran-aligned group's chief of staff, defense minister, and other senior officials. In response, Houthi rebels raided United Nations offices in the Yemeni capital Sana'a and detained at least 11 UN personnel. The detentions were in addition to 23 other UN staff previously detained, some since 2021, and 1 who died in detention this year. Here's the latest in economics. Natural disasters have led to $6.9 trillion in economic losses since 1980, according to insurance estimates. Only around a third of these losses are thought to have been insured, meaning that many of those affected will have had to pay for the damages themselves. Most US tariffs are illegal, court rules. But the US court has given the government a chance to appeal the ruling, which leaves the tariffs in place until October 14th. Previous Democratic presidents appointed 6 judges in the majority and 2 judges who dissented, while Republican presidents appointed 1 judge in the majority and 2 dissenters. China Nvidia rival Cambricon revenue jumps 4,000%. It is now profitable on revenues of $402 million. The numbers underscore how local Chinese challenges to Nvidia are gaining traction as Beijing looks to push its domestic industry. Although Nvidia is now selling in China, reports suggest Beijing has discouraged local firms from buying the US giant's chips. Modi gives tax boon to India's economy. The reforms aim to simplify compliance, lower tax rates, and modernize the GST framework to make it more growth-oriented. Industry executives expect measures such as rationalizing rates into 2 slabs, easing the tax burden on micro, small and medium enterprises, cutting levies on essential goods, and using technology-driven processes like pre-filled returns and faster refunds to encourage investment. Cobalt Metals win lithium exploration rights in DRC. US-based mining startup Cobalt Metals, backed by US billionaires Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, has been granted 7 permits to explore for lithium in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The DRC also supplies about 70% of the world's cobalt. Cobalt is already developing the world's largest cobalt-copper project at Kolwezi in southern Congo. Now for news in development. Push for Europe defense investments to be labeled sustainable. Europe is entering a new era of defense spending, and the European Commission, in its Rearm Europe plan, has issued guidance explaining how defense investment could meet sustainable and ESG criteria by contributing to the UN Social Development Goal 16 peace, justice, strong institutions. The EC's proposal for 2028 to 2034 foresees a near $2.3 trillion budget, with significantly higher allocations for security, Ukraine support, and defense capabilities. It excludes anti-personnel mines, cluster munitions, chemical weapons, and biological weapons. Mexico's data center boom raises water use concerns. Global tech firms are rapidly expanding data centers in Querétaro, Mexico, drawn by low costs and strong infrastructure. Data centers require significant water to cool servers and prevent overheating, putting pressure on local supplies as the drought-hit region faces mounting water shortages. Research estimated that ChatGPT-3 could drink up to 500 milliliters of water for roughly 10 to 50 medium-length responses. Bangladeshis losing 5.5 years to toxic air. The nation's 166.8 million residents are exposed to fine particulate pollution above both the WHO guideline of 5 micrograms per cubic meter and the national average of 60. Between 1998 and 2023, the country's PM2.5 pollution, particles smaller than 2.5 micrometers, surged by 66%, eroding 2.4 years of life expectancy. In 2023, annual average PM2.5 rose to 60.8 micrograms, more than 12 times the WHO guideline. U.S. plan for investment in rare earths. Local production of crucial components in electric vehicles, smartphones, and fighter jets is set to expand rapidly in the coming years, as the U.S. administration intensifies efforts to build up the critical mineral industry to break the dominance China has on the global supply chain. The federal government is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into American companies and made an agreement with one firm to guarantee a minimum price for some locally produced critical minerals. How global debt is structured. The total amount of money owed by corporations, governments, and individuals around the world currently stands at $305 trillion, $45 trillion higher than before the COVID-19 pandemic. Corporations account for $161.7 trillion, or 53%, governments for $85.7 trillion, which is 28%, and individuals comprise $57.6 trillion, or 19%. U.S. debt is $31 trillion. Finally, our social news. Scientists discover Spikey armoured dinosaur fossil in Morocco. Around 165 million years ago, in what is now Morocco, lived one of the most extensively armoured dinosaurs on record. The dinosaur, named Spikemelus, was roughly 4 meters long, weighed around a ton, and was lavishly adorned with meter-long spikes. Missing persons globally increased by 70% in last 5 years. The rise to 284,000 from 169,500 in just 5 years was driven by escalating conflicts, mass migration, and a weakening adherence to the laws of war. Isolated Amazon tribe seen near logging bridge site. Members of an indigenous tribe, who live deep in Peru's Amazon rainforest and avoid contact with outsiders, have been reported entering a village in a possible sign the group is under stress from development. The Mashco-Piro tribe, among the world's largest uncontacted groups, live without regular interaction with society to protect their culture and health. A logging company is building a bridge that could give outsiders easier access to the tribe's territory, a move that could raise the risk of disease and conflict. Loggers who encroached on the tribe's lands have previously been killed. Smartphone bans spread. South Korean students are set to be banned from using phone and digital devices during school hours, joining 35 US states who have implemented restrictions, and following a Dutch study which found a ban on mobile phones in schools that had improved focus among students. A town in Japan is urging all residents to restrict their smartphone use to 2 hours a day to tackle online addiction and sleep deprivation. Officials in Toyoke, Aichi Prefecture, said the measure would target not only children, but also adults, amid growing concern about the physical and psychological toll excessive smartphone use is taking on people of all ages. Monster seaweed bloom taking over the Atlantic. Sargassum has escaped the Sargasso Sea and multiplied across the Atlantic, forming the massive Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt. Fueled by nutrient runoff, Amazon outflows, and climate events, these blooms now reshape ecosystems, economies, and coastlines on a large scale. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.